Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. My name is Laura Van Daken with the AIMMS marketing team, and I'm going to be your host during the webinar. I'd like to welcome you to today's webcast about creating a supply chain analytics center of excellence. What's the big deal? And we'll be answering that question today and much more. It's my pleasure today to welcome our presenters, Chris Gordon and Gerjan de Lang. Chris has worked in supply chain consulting and operations across Europe, the US, and India for over 25 years. He has worked on many supply chain initiatives with a focus on using analytics to promote business transformation. Gerjan has been working with leading companies, partners, and universities around the world. He also works closely with research organizations like Gartner, as well as our sales, support, and R&D teams. He has over 2 decades of experience in the advanced analytics space. Chris is going to discuss why a Center of Excellence for Supply Chain Analytics is important and some of the challenges and benefits of creating a COE, and Gerjan will share some real-world examples and case studies. So with that, I'd like to turn the presentation over to Chris.
Hi, my name's Chris Gordon. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, as I've done a lot of analytical projects in supply chain. In fact, it took 18 months of working at AIMMS and learning from my colleagues and our clients to realize what's really needed for supply chain teams to be successful in running a supply chain analytics center of excellence. And many of our clients have been on this journey for 25 years. And there's no perfection out there, but there's a lot of knowledge out there. And the primary objective of this session is to share that knowledge, and we're trying to do that in a very practical way. So this first webinar is focused on the various different approaches to building a supply chain analytics center of excellence. It's also going to focus on market maturity and sharing some of our recommendations. And then the second webinar on April 19th is focused on tools, methodology, and templates to get you on your way to your own supply chain analytics center of excellence. So how can analytics transform your organization? So business is difficult. Most large companies are driven on ambition, innovation, and chaos. So that's certainly a bold statement. So consider this. Walmart grew from 1 billion to 500 billion since 1980. Apple grew from 14 billion to 233 billion between 2005 and 2015. And this kind of rate of growth comes from visionary leaders, not supply chain analytics. These leaders drive the business forward towards their vision despite not having all the business tools that they need. And that leads to tribal knowledge, sacred cows, and a lot of experienced operators who simply know the right way to do things. At some point, the business becomes just too big and complex, and that tribal knowledge starts to become very much suboptimal. Take, for example, Walmart again. It's got over 100,000, reportedly 140,000 SKUs per store. It's got 11,500 stores. And to be a planner in Walmart means that you've got to manage availability and margin across 500 million square feet. Consider the fashion-sensitive sportswear business, where Adidas coordinates with 1,100 independent factories across 61 countries, and they're expected to deliver availability at a very high level that customers demand, whilst also avoiding obsolescence in a short life cycle business. And then if you look at the other end of that scale with a long life cycle business, look at Caterpillar. It's got machines in service spanning 30 years. And the number one priority for 59% of CAT's customers is parts availability above pricing. So you've got to keep those items in stock for 30 years, and you've got to avoid as much obsolescence as possible. And finally, appreciate that a major FDA-approved drug can cost upwards of $1 billion to be developed. Do you really want your supply chain to run on tribal knowledge alone? So from this chaos really emerges a need to tame the beast. And often ERP is just too generic. Data-supported business prescriptions delivered at the point and place of most value, is a really radical change for a business run on tribal knowledge. Add to this that prescriptive analytics will often produce counterintuitive recommendations, and they can really take a while to believe. We see many times a product or a category emerging that doesn't add business value, or a facility that's weighing down the business. Prescriptive analytics done well can create some very uncomfortable realizations in the business. And we see this a lot in our client meetings, and we see it as projects progress with supply chain analytics. And it often takes a while for these realizations to digest. In fact, the technology and skills change can be relatively easy within a business. We routinely see tooling and teams embedded within a quarter within our client base. But it's not about building technology. It's not even about building cool prescriptive analytics applications. Adoption and business change is the goal. And benefits are realized by doing things differently and by doing things better. Let's talk about defining the opportunity. So we're fortunate that we see many hundreds of applications deployed out there. And we notice that around 60% of applications are really focused around supply chain. So prescriptive analytics can be very, very powerful. We've seen revenue upsides of 4% by optimizing supply management and increasing the speed of new products to market. We've seen safety stock reductions of a massive 25% by creating and embedding business prescriptions that enable a supply chain strategy, a supply chain segmentation strategy, something that's very difficult to enable within ERP and very expensive to enable within ERP. We've also seen a 25% reduction in unplanned rush shipments as prescriptions embed the discipline of planning within your business. So we see teams build applications across the 4 areas of supply chain and access these benefits. And pricing is really in there to recognize its key importance and allow you to consider where you might find partners in your business. So where can I find these benefits waiting to be accessed in my business? You don't need to first understand complex supply chain processes. Instead, you should be looking for clues around unsatisfied demand, stock write-offs, which are going to be published in your quarterly or annual reports, uncompetitive production cost, and you should certainly, as a supply chain professional, understand how competitive you are against your peers, and a high percentage of rush shipments, which really is a classic across most organizations. So what is a supply chain analytics center of excellence? Gartner's recently published their work which describes the 4 main organizational models for supply chain analytics center of excellence. Model 1 refers to a centralized team, and that's almost certainly part of an organization's existing supply chain center of excellence. So these are typically large organizations, and they're large organizations which got the scale to keep people busy in a dedicated center of excellence. Model 2 refers to the distributed team. And the benefit of the distributed team is you've got close proximity to the business, but it can really lack the proximity of the CoE itself and the accelerated learning of being co-located. Model 3 and 4 refer really to the sourcing of these skills, either from a generally internal analytics function, and we see that a lot in our business, or from an outsourced provider, and we're starting to see that increasingly often as well. So these models are really useful, the Gartner models, and we recommend that you take a read of that. But where we find most of the confusion in this area is in the actual skills that you'll need to make this happen. So it's really another level of granularity. So supply chain analytics centers of excellence are still relatively immature. We're fortunate that we deal with hundreds of organizations, and not one of them is what you might call have a perfectly formed supply chain analytics center of excellence. It's really emerging out there, and we see it emerging very quickly. A large part of this is, where do I start? What kind of team do I need? And we like to think of this in the form of a pyramid. So let's start off with the deep mathematical skills. And you don't need many of them. Many COEs can manage with one or two of these skills, or even part-time. But the skills that you need, they've got to be deep. And this is one of my big learnings at AIMMS. So these are operational research skills. You need linear programming skills. You need multi-integer programming skills. You need non-linear programming skills. And these aren't typical supply chain terms. And I wasn't too familiar with them until recently either. So you'll need to look for them in different places. And Gartner recommends taking an inventory of in-house skills, and we often find these skills in the R&D department or other departments that might already exist within your business. You might also select a partner to help you cook up your first few applications. And really a breakthrough for me was you need to recruit an organization called Informs. And as a supply chain professional, it's an organization I didn't know prior to joining AIMMS, but there's literally hundreds, thousands of deep OR people in Informs. And they don't need to be supply chain savvy. And I've heard a lot from supply chain executives about how they're going to search for new talent within supply chain. And in fact, these people and these skills are really hiding in plain sight. And there's probably over 100 of these individuals on this actual call. So what can be surprising is the familiarity of the other skills, which account for 75% of the effort. IT, data, UI, and test skills are almost certainly available in-house. They might already be in your regular supply chain COE. And they can be very quickly trained in your new tooling, usually in a couple of days. And then we move to business understanding and functional leadership. And that's really about drawing from a large team, only a fraction at a time during each project. You need talent that closely fits a problem area. Or better still, you're better off with talent that actually resides in the problem area. And we'll talk about a POC, a proof of concept approach later that's going to really help you make the best use of this talent. And finally, training and change. A supply chain analytics center of excellence is going to create business cases and tooling for major business change. It's almost certainly going to lead to some organizational changes. And you need to be well supported with either in-house talent or partner expertise to be successful. So let's talk about getting buy-in and agreement to a supply chain center of excellence at the executive level. All successful COEs have an active and enthusiastic sponsor. We know this because we see a correlation in our client base. So how do you attract one? We'd all like to think that a series of webinars, case studies, and making connections is going to result in a budget and a skilled team to move forward. And looking across our client base, we almost never see this alone result in sponsorship. In fact, promotion of the benefits of a COE is important, but you should consider this really as groundwork, and you'll need a real business problem to first solve. Most likely it'll be a burning bridge. An important problem that can't be solved with existing approaches and technology. You're really looking for something that the business is reaching out because they're stuck. You need to solve the problem well and quickly, and would really recommend a 2-day proof of concept approach to give the business confidence that you can actually get this done. You'll initially need to beg and borrow resources to get this done. And you might need a couple of successes before your sponsor rewards you with their support and resources. And even when you've you've been successful and secured your sponsorship, success is going to need to keep flowing, so keep projects short. If it's a long project, if it's a 6-month project, it probably belongs in another tool set. It probably belongs with another skill set, probably belongs with ERP. And only take on important projects where your success probability is high. So what about getting buy-in with users? So solving problems quickly and embedding a robust prescriptive analytics solution is really going to win users over. 2-day POCs are really going to be very refreshing for this team that spent a lot of time residing in long implementations. So short cycles are 2 to 8 weeks, with a proof of concept completed in 2 days, is going to create a lot of excitement in the team, and it's going to keep the team interested. Another thing to note is don't try to build a perfect application before you share with users. There's a lot of power in imperfection. What you're going to find is users who want to make changes and are able to put the fingerprints on the application and make it their own. Make sure the user interface is attractive and familiar. Make the change about the insight, not the technology. It's about business change and adoption. We're going to talk more about the details of this approach in our second webinar on April the 19th. We're going to share some proven tools for you to use. Now let's look at one facet of maturity. We looked across our client base and are showing which areas these applications are being built and leveraged. We see an overwhelming majority are in planning, 68%. All forms of planning, with a majority in supply planning. And that's so critical to the health of the business. Yet, when we work with prospects, when we work with new clients, we're still surprised that most businesses still run their supply chain planning off spreadsheets. And they're always fragile. They take days instead of seconds to populate and run. And they really don't reward collaboration, which is such a key part of supply planning. We see a lot of action in network modeling. It's where organizations feel that the business is so unique that the regular off-the-shelf tools, and there are many, don't really accurately reflect their business. And instead they turn to their center of excellence for help. Manufacturing, sourcing, and outside of supply chain pricing still sees dozens of applications deployed. Because of the number of applications successfully deployed in planning, it makes a great place to start. Business value is typically high, and there's a network of experienced talent out there for you to lean on. Gertjan, I'm going to hand over to you to discuss maturity in the market and provide some examples.
Thank you, Chris. Yeah, so what Chris is saying is that it's very interesting to see over the last 25 years of people have developed their own maturity or supply chain of excellence centers in their companies. And what we decided to do is to look at how is our market looking, what are our users doing, and we started to characterize them in different industries. And what you see here is an indication of how many applications are being used in the different markets. Oil, gas, and chemicals. For us, what we see at least, a very, very strong market. I think it's also not unnatural, because if you look at the linear programming, the OR skills that Chris was talking about, a lot of us found it in the oil and gas market. Already they started practicing this stuff in the 70s. But what you also see, there's some very big oil companies that have created and formed a real center of excellence where they're doing both the research and the operations, but also starting to support the business that are really on top of it. The challenge there is typically in the deep processes, because they want to be very stable. They want to change a lot of stuff there. But if you see on all the stuff around it, they're continuously trying to get the most out of all these technologies. But of course, every oil, gas, and chemical company, they are different and they have their own way to do things. So very dependent on also the business strategy. And we have oil and gas companies that focus on a general strategy, global strategy, that typically have a center of excellence. But there are also a lot of chemical companies that are more focused on being sure that every department or every process plant is profitable by itself. So they will have more ideas in the business side. So we'll do their center of excellence in a small way on the business side. If you look at manufacturing, also a big portion, we tend to see a lot of activity there. But the manufacturing, in our eyes at least, although it's very mature, they tend to not build a lot of their own center of excellence. They work a lot with vendors. And what you see, a lot of our partners work with different vendors on the scheduling, technical planning, sourcing planning, and they're very much connected to, and they have a very close connection with both parties, and they continuously look for change in the organization. And here I will share a NAM package later on as well to give you a little bit more detail. Food and beverage, tradition, also a big one. I have 2 cases about it in the food industry. And if you're very interested in that one, we had a presentation last week, a webinar where we go very much indeed on what you could and cannot do. But also here we see a lot of outside vendors being used, but also specific ones that say, well, it's so important for me, I want to build my own center of excellence. In fact, we saw some of the companies even buying analytics teams because they know that if they want to move on, want to be competitive, they need to start building up their own maturity as well. The retail, a little further down, it's on our side a little less applications as you see. But what is interesting is that the retail, specifically with the online coming up, the new analytics coming up, they're moving very fast. And typically they start building up their own maturity immediately. Last week I was at Gartner, just came back yesterday, and a lot of stuff in analytics is in the research. Consumer analytics, what can I do? How can I profile? How can I better assist my customers, giving them the right products on the right moments? So there's a big push, I think, there, and I believe also there will be a large growth. And there you see a combination still of getting teams in and moving teams internally as well. On the transportation side, I will start sharing something about TNT. It's a case that some of you might have known, but I think TNT is a great example in the logistics industry where they really go the extra mile. They really make supply chain analytics and Center of Excellence not only part of a core team centrally, but make it part of the whole organization. So what we try to do in that sense, so also what I tried to explain a little bit, we wanted to somehow say, well, if we look at that situation, we look at our market, how do we see the relative maturity? And some they might relate a little bit with the application that we see. So if they have a lot of applications that typically are very mature, but it doesn't necessarily have to be. And an example, as I shared with the manufacturing side, we see a lot of applications, but we see that the maturity internally organization, the supply chain center of excellence itself is not yet there, but it can grow, but people see it. If you look at the high-tech side, all the way at the bottom, we have some high-tech clients and they're doing great stuff. But somehow, I don't know why it is, maybe it is because it's high-tech and everybody knows very well what they should do because they have a lot of knowledge about analytics. They don't need to maybe new analytics because everybody in itself is an analytics person. But somehow that's still a step we need to take. And I think we believe there's a lot of opportunity there because also in the high-tech side, you have big supply chains, you have big decisions to make. You have to understand what you're going to build, how often you're going to build it. And for us, ASML is a very nice example. It's the producer of the chip machines. So anybody who has chips in their phones and all that stuff, typically they're built by ASML or by their competitor, but they're the world leader. And what they've done on a very high level, board level in the organization, they decided to make every decision that's key to their business, and typically that's a strategic decision on what to build next, what's the next machine that comes up, make that part of the CXO process. And they have a whole process together with the strategic network group, strategic decision group. They build a whole process around the analytics, validate the questions, validate the results, look at the scenarios, and then make a decision, because these decisions are life dependent. It's a matter of shall we build or not, but that's a 10 or 5 year way out. You have to know what you do. And what happens out of that, suddenly other organizations see, hey, well, hang on, then we also have a service support department where we can maybe advance analytics skills. And then we have maybe some other department, sourcing department, we can advance skills. Then suddenly you become, in fact, out of itself, a center of excellence, which I think is a great natural way of growing. But it started with a burning bridge, like Chris was saying. You need an actual reason for business value, and then you can start looking around. I think that's a very important message. If you have something like that, you see a result in one place, don't stop, because you have already the skills in-house, but start looking around you. So looking at that, I thought also let's look at the audience today. And what you see here is on the left side, you see the different industries. And unfortunately, with the GoToMeeting, we have many more industries that we have depicted in this graph, but it gives you a little bit of a sense of who's all on board today. So we see a lot of manufacturing, energy, chemicals, utilities, pharma, retail. So it very much is in line with what we see as well. There's the interest. But there are also a lot of other pockets out there. Healthcare, I think it's a very important one. It's going to come up. We didn't put it in there, but I talked about this as well last week with the Gartner folks. Why is it that healthcare is less part of this? And what you typically see when it's highly regulated an organization where people are very robust, they want to make sure everything is always correct. It takes a long time to change an organization. If you want to take a full decision process, you need to get a lot of people on board. And with healthcare, of course, where life is dependent on it, people are very reluctant to make a change very quickly. So it takes a long time. On the right side, just for indication, is where do people come from? Of course, logically, because of the time, United States is a big one, but we see, of course, a lot of Europe. But it also shows you a little bit the interest is not just in the main Western Europe or it's in the United States. We see it all over the world in all types of industries. And I think that's a great thing of the things that is happening it becomes approachable, it becomes useful. So let me go into a few examples, as Chris was saying. JBS is a first example, and JBS, for the people who do not know that, JBS is a very, very big beef producer, beef, lamb, poultry producer, processing company. It's a global leader, in fact, many brands. And what was interesting about JBS has 50 processing units in Brazil that we were focusing on at the time, and they typically had a strategy of, okay, everybody goes on its own. Every local processing unit has to decide for its own, and we'll just see what happens. As long as they're profitable, the company will be profitable. But they realized, and also with the change of management, that to really be the best and grow heavily, because they wanted to grow very fast, they had an aggressive growth plan, we need to take a holistic view. We need to understand how we can benefit from the different processing units around the market. Specifically because the process is very complex. If you want to process meat, it could be halal, it could be kosher, it could be with certain hormones or not. You have all these different ways you have to do it, and you cannot do that in every processing plant. It's going to be too complex. We have to borrow from each other, which made the model just not conceivable anymore. You cannot do it in a spreadsheet. You cannot do it in a self-made tool on every processing unit. So that was in fact the burning bridge, the need for the start. But also I think the change of the management there, a new person in place, seeing this view, seeing this holistic view, and having an idea how to take the next step. I think it's very important to make this first step. But they could not do that alone. Here they very closely work with Unisoma. Unisoma had already a lot of ideas and knowledge about the meat processing industry, so they could very easily come in. They understood the business. This is one of the small where the outsourcing skills together with the insourcing business knowledge is making success. The beauty of this is what they now could do after they finish. They could have the ability to scale it dynamically with one person instead of 54 persons, 50 persons plus in the organization. It did not take them weeks anymore processing Excel spreadsheet. It just took them a few hours to have everything run, and they knew exactly what was happening every day. They can rerun it several times a day, in fact, and really made their organization enterprise ready. And still, that's all great, of course, but if you look at JBS, and I think that's also important in the JBS case, JBS is part of a much larger organization. They do dairy, they do leather, they do flowers, they do all kinds of, they do makeup and all this. So there's a lot of other stuff inside this organization as well that is connected to it. And if you boil it all down to the supply chain and the skills that you have, and you can reuse those skills, you can repurpose those skills, you have a great benefit outside. So we're now looking into the different areas of the JBS holding and say, where can we do this more? What can we do in dairy? What can we do in leather? And then you can use the skills, reuse them, and benefit in a much broader sense. I think that's very important. So a fairly similar one is BRF. But I wanted to put this out there because, and also, by the way, both of them are discussed in this webinar of last week, and then we give you all the details. It's a $13 billion company, about a third of the size of JBS. But although it's the same, it's also in meat processing, it's in chicken. And chicken is very different. Chicken has a very, very complex sourcing. And in the sourcing, because chickens they grow not evenly. It's a 30-day cycle. Well, the processing is shorter than that. So it's a lot of different things you have to manage. And initially, when you think of this problem, people think it's unsolvable. It's so unsolvable within time. And what was nice to learn about this, and again, Unisoma was involved, we can use the same principles and just add another piece of the chain. So here you see the result of having the core of the chain already done, so the processing, delivery, packaging, all that stuff, but now you can add something else. You can add the sourcing and the live sourcing of it. So it's just a natural extension where you start connecting things. And if you just look at the savings, you're saving $50 million in 2 years. It's just crazy if you look at that. Even we, as AIMMS, are so surprised every time when we see those numbers. But it's beautiful how people can benefit from this if they really get their act together, if they start putting the right people in place. And again here, very important, the foundation of the pyramid, the business leadership should be there. Somebody should be able to change this place, because things are changing where people naturally said, okay, but we always did it like this. Then suddenly it's like, oh, we might have always done it like this, but we're going to do it else in a different way. So tell me how we can improve. And the beauty of that, if you start focusing on getting these results, you can also think about new ways of doing your business. And you can start focusing your energy on other stuff because these things are being solved for you. Nampak in the manufacturing space, it's an example. I think it's a very cool example that just happened last year. But this is in South Africa. It's a leading packing in Africa. And if you don't know about the glass business, bottling business. You can imagine you don't want to make bottles in Europe and then ship them to Africa or Asia because that's too expensive. Glass is very heavy, so you need to locally bottle. It's the same with brewing, it's also typically locally. And the challenge here was 3 glass furnaces and they run 24/7, so you don't want to have any maintenance downtime. So you want to make sure if you have downtime, you don't need it. 350 tons of glass per day. And interestingly enough, here we were together with Districon, a partner in Holland, and this is the first time we operated in glass. So we did not know anything about glass. Districon didn't know anything about glass. So we had to learn almost on the job. But we learned, or we knew a lot about the supply chain. We knew a lot about what optimization could do for a company like Nampak. So we were very confident to go in. And the beauty here again is we had a strong leader, the new CEO, who we knew from a former customer, said, you know what, I look at this place, I see a problem here. We're not able to be agile enough. What happened here, if a big order suddenly came in today, they had to say no because they couldn't fit it into the schedule. And that would be a lost order, and a lost order is never good. Or they could not map the inventory with the sales that they were doing. And they needed to be much more agile with that. So a lot of, again, as Chris was saying, a lot of Excel processing was going on. And by working very cooperatively with them, within 4 months, we changed it from an Excel-based platform to an AIMMS-based platform, working with the end users, working with the business in a very continuous way, deploying it. So it was almost like starting off with the proof of concept for 2 days, but then going in an iterative way with the end users building the tool, because, you know, they've never seen such a tool. So how would they know what they exactly need? And by the way, we don't know exactly what these people want to have, and every business will be a little bit different because they might have different goals. So you want to iteratively also work with these end users to expand the tool or to maybe restrict the tool. All these things will come up. But within 4 months, the system was operational. And with the on and off side, working with these with the Nampak folk, it was just an amazing journey for both or all 3 parties to make this happen. And schedulers, sales, and top management was involved here. So it's a very cooperative way. A beautiful thing as well, what happened here, and I think that's a very important key point when you start doing supply chain center of excellences. If you do it well, you have the liberty to do different things you could never do before. You have the feeling that, okay, I need to just run my execution. I just need to run my plan. That's all I can do because that's the time I have with my team. But if that's been taken care for you, then you can suddenly think about, okay, what happens if? You can do the what if scenarios. You can do branching out in different ways. Or hey, what if we could optimize the sourcing, which you normally did not have time for? So it creates opportunity. And the beauty of it is, well, when you start doing these exercises, you get the benefit from the first application. You can use those benefits to invest in the next application. So you create space, both and money, to advance your business in that sense. So it's an ideal way to start building up a supply chain practice. And what we do see, and that's not with every case, and to be honest, I'm not sure if that happens with Nampak, but whenever we have these exercises, at some point, probably after the 2nd or 3rd application, our customers start to see, well, you know what, it's great we've done it with your partner, but now we want to have the partner also help us build up our own maturity. Still be connected with it, but even see that we need more space inside as well. So there's a maturity happening from that. A strategic network design. It's a more general one. This is one of the examples of a regional food company in the US, and you can read the story here. But I think what's interesting about the strategic network designs is it's a very, very common problem to tackle. And we have amazingly many examples around. And I think in every industry this is happening, where people born out of Excel, they started doing exercise about networks. They have to decide how to close a store, close a warehouse, open up a warehouse, where it's located, how to enter a new customer will have a large logistical impact maybe on your network, how to enter that, how to maybe reshift some allocations. I think in any business where a supply chain you will have this problem. What we tend to see, a lot of the problems tend to just not fit the package solutions. If they do, great, go there. But people want to connect different things than just the network. They want to maybe connect it with the sourcing. Maybe we want to connect with some pricing ideas. They want to connect with sales forecasts that they cannot do right now. They have very specific constraints in the network that cannot be easily modeled, but they need to be modeled anyway, because otherwise the solution is not what it's for you. And you want to be different in that. You want to make sure you align with your business goals. And in fact, I think Laura Cesari said it as well, the strategic network design is almost like a field where you can have a special center of excellence for, because there's so many things you can do. And what we see happening as well, where it used to be, okay, let's do our network design maybe every year, and let's get a consultant in, and they will do that for us, and they will give us an answer. We get a PowerPoint, and now we know what to do. We'll execute, and a year later, we'll look at it again. Nowadays, that's not the standard anymore. The standard is, I want to be empowered as an analyst in the company, a business analyst, not a mathematical analyst. I want to regularly analyze my network, and I don't want to do that every year. I maybe want to do it every 3 months proactively, see what's going on. Do I need to change something? Because that, I think, then you're going to get really the most out of your network. Don't wait till there's a disruption, or if there is a disruption, what to do. And we've seen customers in the logistics industry where they say, well, we just signed up a very big client, what to do? Okay, that's kind of late in the game. So what they started to do is that when already in the sales process, they started to enter and use these type of tooling. They say, what if this customer comes on board? What will be the effect on the network? And if they could develop that very quickly, it's a very great way to enhance your business. And as an example here, I think, is it on it? Yeah, it's not in here, but typically these design network studies, if you build them from scratch, they typically take 20 to 30 days to build in full, completely customized to your organization. And then you can repurpose them and reuse them and maybe tweak them a little bit, or use them in different regions depending on how you're organized. It doesn't have to be a global tool, it can also be a local tool, or local designs networks can be created. BP is also a very interesting example out of the chemical business, a very interesting one, and this went a little bit different than what we've seen before. And what Chris was saying before, the recognition of OR type of technology or skills is very important, but also having the foot in the business is very important. And here, in fact, there's one specific person, and there's a great interview about him as well on our website, who knew very much about OR, but also it was with the other foot in the business. He needed to make sure planning was being done, global supply chains were being managed. And that combination led him to believe, we can do things better. The technology that we have in our business has been there for 20 years. What's the next step? And that's in fact where the seed sprung on we need to advance. And based on that, based on the first success, you need a success to get more budget and to get new ideas, he was able to build a whole practice around it. And that practice started with advancing the operational side, very directed to the business users. And these business users are all around the world. And what typically was very hard to get these business together because the tools were maybe clunky, or it was hard to convey the message, or they were not good insight of ROI. These ROIs could now be very easily visualized. People could very easily access the tools, and they were just being brought one after the other very, very quickly. And one of the big challenges here as well was when they did these results, it stayed very much into this group of planners. And of course, managers also wanted to see what's going on. They wanted to understand the uncertainty, want to understand the planning result, because they need it for other things. And by changing it into an enterprise practice, when they started here also adapting AIMMS Pro as a platform where it was very easy accessible through a browser, management got excited, salespeople got excited. So suddenly everybody started to collaborate. And then suddenly it became a thing of the whole company. I think that's a great testament to starting off with a very small thing, but making it broad. And that allowed also the organization to say, well, okay, now we've done the first important stuff, but what else is out there? And now strategic things are happening. What should I do with my fleet management? How should I do my rail car planning? All these type of things come up. And again, you have the skills, you have the technology, you have the buy-in, and then suddenly people come up to this team and say, hey, whatever, can you do this? We have an idea about this, so can you help me? And new things evolve around that. And just one example that's out there, vessel management, how can we improve the number of vessels? That already saves 3 million a year per vessel. So if you save 2-3 vessels, it's 10 million a year. So the payback with one application is already there. But it's being able to communicate, being able to get people on board is a very important one. And it was almost like groundwork, get your boots on the ground, and being very, very consistent, being very, very stubborn, and show that you really can do. And sometimes you need these type of people as well in the organization. It's not like a 5-minute game and you'll be done with it. And TNT Express, I think, is a great example. And I'm not going to go into the details of the challenges that they had and what they solved. But TNT Express, a large carrier operating in 200 countries, and you might know being taken over by FedEx at this time. I don't know exactly the exact date, but they're right there. But this started up in 2008. crisis, high fuel prices. They just had a big issue. They could not deliver the package within the pricing. They would just lose a lot of money. So they had to make a very strategic decision on the optimal network. What depots to shut down, what airports to shut down, in that sense shut down, not use it anymore. And that, what was nice about this is this started with a professor, Hein Fleuren, together with, I think it was one of his former students who was the strategic network director, who was just sitting on the table, this should be different. And out of that, the first ideas came on board. But the nice thing there, we had an immediate connection also with the board level, and we started to see results almost instantly. Almost instantly, they could analyze, within 1 or 2 months, they could analyze what they should do strategically with the network to save a lot of money. I think they saved $50 million right then and there, and that kept them in business. Doing that, or kept them in business, maybe it's too strong, but that kept them in the next phase. And it allowed them as well to start building on something new, start building on, okay, what should we do locally in the network? How can we optimize point of delivery returns? And of course, having a professor on board, a very strong practical professor, Hein Fleuren, immediately, suddenly they said, you know what, but we see this only with the two of us, but that's great. But we have how many eyes in our company? Everybody should be in the company and being able to do this. So we have to develop something as an organization to make this ingrained not only in the strategic network team, not only in the analytics team, we need to make it part of everybody in the organization. That's how they developed the global optimization program. And they included that with communities of practice, and the beauty of that as well, I think, and that's a great testament to the team. They also offered these services and the learnings to the World Food Program, where they can benefit from third world countries, how to do logistics there. So what we see here is hundreds of people over the last year being educated now within TNT about understand the concepts of it. They don't have to exactly know what it means, but they have to listen, find the signals, and use those signals to report centrally and start building on proof of concepts together. Become part of the deal. With that, I want to turn it over to Chris again.
Thanks, Gertjan. So based on our experience, and I'd say more importantly, learning to our clients, we've got 6 key recommendations. So number 1, and it's really important, it's not about technology. It's not even about building cool prescriptive analytics applications. Adoption and business change is the only goal. Number 2, there's a bounty of opportunity left on the table in supply chain. Look first towards planning and revenue. Number 3, a supply chain center of excellence can quickly become a supply chain analytics center of excellence. You've got to add some operational research talent. You've got to add some technology, and you've got to add a methodology. Number 4, wait for the right opportunity to launch and really earn your executive sponsorship. Number 5, each project cycle use a proof of concept approach to accelerate adoption, and you've got to keep energy levels high. You've got to consider that it's really a continuous effort. And number 6, join us for our second webinar on April 19th, and we're going to walk through tools and templates that are really going to help you get moving. And it's going to help you get moving forward towards your own supply chain analytics center of excellence success. I'm going to hand back to you, Laura.
Great. Well, I'd like to thank all of you for joining us, and we hope that you enjoyed the information presented today. A big thank you again to our presenters, Chris and Gertjan, for a very informative webcast. And we had a few questions come in about the video and the slides. We will be sending those out to everyone within the next few days, so be on the lookout for that email. And if you have any questions specifically for our presenters that we weren't able to get to, please feel free to reach out to each of them directly. I've included their emails here and their phone numbers. You could also go to the AIMMS website in the resources section to get some case studies, many of which Gertjan actually touched on today. And of course, don't miss part 2 of this series about CoE on April 19th. As Chris mentioned, we're really going to get more detailed about the tools, the templates, and getting started. All right. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.